Welcome back to another episode of Margarita Mondays. We're back. It's Jessica Whitney.
And Laura Kerr.
Today, we're going to talk about travel.
And it's fitting because I just got back from Costa Rica, and actually, I think it was one of the best flights I've ever had.
Really? Tell us about that.
Well, on the way there, although I flew WestJet, I was on a Swoop plane.
Okay, because they bought Swoop, right?
Well, they owned Swoop, but I think they maybe bankrupted Swoop. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the whole ins and outs of what happened with Swoop.
Someone Google it and
Yeah.
tell us what happened.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I liked the pink planes.
Okay.
Even though they were small, I like pink, so it was great. It was funny because I think we were like row 4, so you'd think you might have like a little bit of space, but I'm fine, but I'm short. And Jordan, I was like, I don't know if he's gonna be able to fit this seat.
Something we've never had a problem doing. Sitting on an empty
Right.
Yeah.
But then when he was walking on the plane and we had a checked bag, so we didn't have a carry-on, so we each had personal items, but he had a backpack on. And when he's in front of me and he's walking with his backpack, and I thought, he's gonna take out like 3 people just trying to get his backpack into a seat. I had to stop him because he was gonna take out a guy with a laptop because it was just so tight. So then the flight actually went by quick. I mean, I didn't get a margarita, I got a mimosa because it was morning. He got a Caesar.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. And we made it there. It was quick. I think there's something exciting about the anticipation of the trip. So the flight there is always kind of going to be good because you're excited about where you're going.
Totally.
And then funny enough, the way home, when I went to check in, our seats weren't together. Like I was row 2 and Jordan was row 28.
Good thing it was him way back there. See you when we get home.
Which is funny because originally my seat was like row 14, so because there was nothing closer, so it was like manifesting one at the front of the plane, but I maybe forgot to manifest for Jordan. So then I go and I pay extra to move us both up to the front, and we're both row 2.
Okay.
And then our flight gets delayed. And then so I went in to check the timing of our flight, and then all of a sudden we were in 2 different seats again.
Oh,
I'm like, what the heck? So then I end up calling, and he's like, I'm sorry, it's a different plane. It was supposed to be a Swoop plane, but it's definitely broken. He didn't say that, but he said, due to some unforeseen maintenance issues, we're sending a bigger jet. I was like, oh, a bigger jet. But I was like in row, I don't know, 15 or something. I'm like, I don't want to be at the back of the plane. And then he said, I'm sorry, but I can move your husband with you, blah, blah, blah. So he did. And I was like, okay, fine. And then he refunded me the charge that I paid for better seats. And so then when we get to the airport, I don't like to board the plane early. So I don't care if I'm zone 1. I'm not getting on first. I want to be off of the plane for as long as I can if we're just going to be sitting on the tarmac.
Yeah.
So Jordan and I go in at the end, and there's a whole bunch of people at the front. Well, not at the very front. And then we get to our row. There's no one around us. So we've got all of this space, plus we're in a row of 3. So then we had a free seat. If I wanted, I could have laid on the seat behind me. So it all worked out.
It always does.
And there was so much room. Also, because it was a bigger jet, our flight was then an hour sooner arriving home, which was wonderful, especially because the flight was delayed.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I know.
This reminds me, actually. So something that I've experienced and I've witnessed over the last few years is that I notice people who talk about traveling being a negative experience, and when they go to the airport they lose their bag and security is a nightmare and all of this stuff, and all the work that we've done on manifestation and learning about the laws of the universe and how everything is energy and what you put out is what you get back. I've started experimenting with travel specifically. And so I started thinking to myself and seeing in my mind, that every time I go to the airport, it's so seamless and people are so kind and I get through security so easily and I'm always at the front of the plane or I always have seats that are empty beside me. And then that is my experience. Like when we were going to Poland last year, Laura went to Poland a week before me and then I met her there. So I bought my flight pretty last minute and I'm one of those people that's like, we'll just call me a dilly-dallier.
Procrastinator. Dilly-dallier.
I don't want to give myself that name because we're working on a different identity. But yes, time management has not always been my strong suit. So in my head, you know those TikToks where people are like in girls' heads and they're like, okay, if I'm going out, like I have to shower and then I have to do this and I have to. That's me. I'm always in my head about like, well, how long is it going to take me to do this and this and this and this? Anyway, whenever I travel, I got to drop off the dogs and then I got to get parking and then whatever. What happened was I was at Mom's house and Jade was there, our sister Jade. She was helping me get parking and then I realized that I forgot my headphones. And what was the flight? 8 hours?
Yeah.
And I thought, I cannot go without headphones. So I went to Jade's house to get her headphones because Mom only had the like over the ear headphones. And in my mind, I had 2 hours to get to the airport. And then I think it was like 2 hours to board the plane, whatever. But when I plugged in the airport, because of traffic, because of the time of day, it was taking longer than 2 hours. So I start driving and I'm in a panic a little. Okay. And so we teach manifestation and we talk about like energy. And so if you're stressed that you're going to be late,
you're going to be late every time. Yeah.
It happens every time.
Yeah.
So I actually got to watch the clock or the GPS add minutes every minute. And I thought to myself, no, this is the time for me to practice what I've learned. So my grandma has passed on, she's transitioned, and I often ask her to be my guardian angel. And I'm like, Grandma, help me get to the airport on time. Everything's going to be smooth sailing. I'm going to get through security really quickly. I'm going to park really fast. Like everything's going to be good. These are conversations I have with myself. And I actually, guys, my grandma shows up in 777. I actually have a ring that has 777 on it. And I saw 777 on a license plate. And I was like, okay, she's here. And I actually watched the clock go
back.
Yes. So I pulled in at 6 o'clock. My flight was at 7:30. And when I was driving, it was like 5:45, 6, 6:05, 6:08, 6:15. And then when I said, Grandma, help me with this, I actually watched it go 6:08, 6:07, 6:05. I parked at 6 o'clock, got into the airport at 6:04, and I was through security by 6:20.
And then what happened?
And then I stood in line and boarded my plane and left at 7:30.
Oh, really? Was it on time?
Yes.
Oh, it's funny because mine was delayed.
Yeah, hers was delayed.
So I just assumed hers would be delayed. She would make it no problem.
No.
And hers was right on time.
Mine was right on time. Like, so this to me feels like something that I was in alignment with. I got in the energy of what I would love, which was to be on time, for everything to be smooth sailing. And then it was. Like, I even had time to get gum.
Right.
I think I even got Starbucks. And then I was on the plane at like 7:20 and we left at 7:30.
That's amazing.
And it was smooth sailing all the way to Poland. That was my longest flight I had ever been on at the time. Now I'm trying to think, was Greece longer? Anyway.
It's probably about the same.
Anyway, I just think that when you adopt this attitude that everything is always working out for you and you actually like connect with something greater than you, like for me it was my grandma, but you can say universe, source, God, whatever. It's like time is just an illusion. So I notice with myself when I stress about time, it takes me more time. But when I'm relaxed about it, it's like I feel like so much can get done in 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah. So there's this whole concept actually called Einstein time.
Yes.
Right? Versus, is it Newtonian time? So we've created calendars, we've created time, and what Einstein suggested was that time can expand for us because we are the creators of it. And when I heard that concept, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't always have to be late. I can just make time expand for me. And that's probably why my flights are delayed often, so I have more
And look
time.
at what she just said. If you
Yeah.
just watched our first episode, we talk about beliefs. What is the belief? She has this belief that mine are always delayed.
No, I'm creating more time. Okay. Yeah, hey, listen, perspective is everything. My last flight actually home from Costa Rica was delayed. And I just felt good about it. I was like, well, I don't have to leave at 9 now. I can leave at 11. And it was great. And then when we arrived, because it was delayed, they gave us vouchers for food and stuff. And Jordan and I get in and we go and have dinner. Had fish tacos. They were delicious. And then we go to sit down to prep for our flight. And then there's a whole bunch of people complaining that they just received the voucher.
My goodness. You know what's so funny though? I want to bring this up because I think that the way you respond to things really makes your life good or bad.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because I remember, and we'll talk about this on another podcast, but I am someone who will just hope for the best, but not always do what I probably should do.
Okay.
So when I was leaving for the first time with the dogs from Costa Rica, because I lived in Costa Rica, and I was going back to Canada with the dogs with my dad, I looked up on the internet. Don't always trust Google, guys. But to get into Canada, you just needed to have the rabies vaccination.
Okay.
So I arrived to the airport and the airline says, where's your paperwork from the vet? And I was like, I don't have paperwork. I just have the rabies information. They're like, you need to have paperwork. And I was like, oh, sakes.
Okay, what happened? Did you not go?
We didn't go.
Okay, right. I couldn't remember. I couldn't recall.
So I'm always posting on social media, and I'll never forget posting that I couldn't now go. I needed to go to the vet, get the paperwork, book another flight. This is why it's great to have assistance in your life, because my mom did it all for me. And then my dad and I drove to the vet, got the whatever it was. I think that was a Saturday, but we couldn't fly out till the Monday because we had to wait for this to be signed by like the what do you call it?
I don't know, someone more official.
Like the Costa Rican official
representative or
whatever it is. Yeah. And in Costa Rica, the vet will actually take care of all of that for you. In Canada, you actually have to go to a separate place to have it signed, but they take care of it. But it was just like a timing thing with the weekend.
Right.
Anyway, so mom got us off that flight and onto another flight. We got the paperwork, but I posted on social media, and her daughter, so she would have been 13, maybe 12 or 13. She's like, well, at least you get a few more days in paradise. Because I think it was November, so it was cool in Canada.
Okay, were you in Costa Rica?
I was in Costa Rica.
Okay, right.
And I just think that if you can adopt an attitude like that, where everything is always working out for you, instead of being the people that, you know, are bitching about things being delayed or not having the voucher or whatever, like, who cares if you get a $7
No, listen,
voucher?
the funny thing was that they received the voucher, but then they were upset because our flight was leaving in like 45 minutes and they had already eaten.
Oh.
So then I suggested go get a snack for the plane. So they did end up doing that, but it's just perspective, right?
And it's just funny that there's a lot of people out there, and maybe I don't want to believe this, but it's what I've observed. There's a lot of people that want to find the negative.
Well, I mean, our whole last episode was talking about how people are addicted to complaining.
Yes.
Regardless, if my flight's delayed, it's because I've manifested it because I want it to be delayed.
Because there's some. So I always say to myself, because this just makes me feel better, I'm like, there's a reason, and I might not know it now, but I'll know it later.
Yeah, totally.
You might be meant to meet somebody, you might be meant to fly on a certain plane, you might be meant to, you know, like maybe I was meant to go to that vet. Yeah. Maybe I was meant to, you know, whatever. You won't always know, but it's so interesting. And actually, when I went back to Costa Rica, I connected with this girl who is a very good friend of mine now, and maybe we wouldn't have done that.
Right.
Right? And I
Yeah.
got to spend a few more days in the sunshine, and yeah, it's interesting.
It's fun. The thing is when you start to adopt the belief that everything is always happening for you, there aren't bad things that happen to you. There's opportunities for new learning, there's lessons, there's possibly contrast that's helping you to get even more clear about what you really desire. But nothing bad is ever happening to me.
No, and you know what? I always say it's always happening for me, but another thing that I learned from a coach was that everything is happening from me.
Oh yeah, I like
So,
that one too.
you know, like,
Yep.
so I do think that we can often see what's going on in our consciousness if we start to observe what we're experiencing. So, for example, the Pearson always loses my bags. It's like,
Do they?
that, no, not me, but people
like, I don't
saying
know
that.
this.
No,
Right,
people
right, right.
saying that.
Right.
You know, the people that go to Facebook and talk
Right.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Facebook is the place.
Yeah.
That's happening from you.
Yeah.
If you see a friend have their luggage lost at Pearson and then you hope that doesn't happen to you and then it happens to you, you're like, oh my goodness, of course Pearson always loses. Well, that doesn't ever happen to me. That's never happened to me. I've never had my luggage lost ever, not once in my whole life, and I've traveled a ton.
I have once, but my dad always said never check a bag because they'll lose your luggage. And he said that over and over and over again. And I'm like, well, I'm going to check a bag. Like, I got shampoos and creams I want to take, right? And so our
Then
first,
it happened.
yeah, it did. I think
That was
it was our second trip to Costa Rica.
Okay.
Then my bag got lost. But it was also because my husband didn't check a bag and he kept saying, I can't believe you're checking a bag. I can't believe you're checking a bag. So I'm not sure I actually manifested it. And it all worked out for me because I just got stuff reimbursed after. So I got to do a little bit more shopping.
Yeah.
So it happened for me. I eventually got my bag.
And then I'm sure next time you didn't pack all those vitamins and your apple cider vinegar.
I did still, but I said my bag will arrive with me. It will.
I actually try my very hardest to only take a carry-on.
Yeah.
That's just something I prefer. It's not for everyone, but I remember my first trip to Costa Rica and I packed this massive suitcase and I had like 4 pairs of shoes, 2 pairs of flip-flops, wedge heels, like 17 dresses, 14 bikinis, like all this stuff.
Yep.
And I wore the same flip-flops every single day, like wedge heels, not possible in Costa Rica. You don't want to do that to yourself. But that was my first time there, so I didn't know if I was going to need like the fancier cocktail dresses and stuff like that. But now I'm just like, less is better. And anyway, you can always know what's going on in your consciousness by what is happening in your outer world. And sometimes it's a good idea to like check in and ask like, what energy am I in? What frequency am I on? What's the vibration I'm in? Because that will tell you a lot and you can tune to a different frequency, right? Like if you want things to be easy and you want to get on your flight on time and that kind of thing, just adopt that belief, right?
And ultimately, I just tell myself that we're meant to connect and have fun with one another, right? So if your flight's delayed, maybe you're meant to meet a few extra people. Like we did on our, even the lovely couple where the husband was complaining about the vouchers. I chimed in because the wife said, oh, he's retired now. He needs something to do. I was obviously eavesdropping and I thought it was hilarious. So then we engaged in conversation. We had a lot of fun. So, you know, I think we're just meant to have fun in this life.
And life is about the journey, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I feel like so many people are rushing to get to the destination, but it's like, how much fun is that if you're always waiting to have fun until you get somewhere?
Yeah.
It's like, think about all the moments in between that you're missing out on.
Yeah.
I want to tell you guys a little bit about some of my travel experiences and some of my greatest manifestation stories because Laura and I both invested into a program where we were learning about manifestation and the laws of the universe. And one of the things they said to us was like, write a list of 50 things you want to do. And I remember putting that I wanted to travel more, I wanted to move to Costa Rica, I wanted to work online. I think I had put like an income goal. You know, I did think that money was important, but then we were told to write as if we were already living that life. So, like in the present tense. So, you create this little story, which is a great exercise. If you guys have never tried it, I would try it. Bob Proctor always started his little journal entries with like, I'm so happy and grateful now that, you guys have probably heard that. So I would write like, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm working online and I'm living in Costa Rica and I'm traveling all the time. I'm traveling multiple times a year and I'm flying first class and blah, blah, blah. I was writing all this stuff. And I would just write it over and over and over again. And the more I wrote it, the more I felt emotionally connected to it. And the more emotionally connected, I was putting out a vibration that that was the life I was living. And I started seeing signs of it. Started seeing like, you know, first class flights. And we started looking at houses in Costa Rica and all this stuff. And then I remember it was, I think, 2022. Was it? It was my birthday in 2022. Just a few days prior to that, I had just enrolled into Manifestation Babes, tapping into massive wealth. It was like 8 days to tapping into massive wealth. And she did emotional freedom technique every single day for 8 days. And so you would log into the back office and into the library and do this series. And so on like the 6th day or something, my friend Angela messages me and says, Happy birthday. And then she's like, Hey, do you want to go to Mexico to swim with whale sharks? The trip is completely paid for. You just have to pay for your flight. And I was like, well, yeah, duh. Like, of course I do. So I started connecting my journaling, my writing with this trip coming into my life.
Right.
Right. So I went on the trip. It was wonderful. It was great. It was whatever. And then it just started happening more and more to me.
Right.
Like it was it was this year, 2024, when I worked with a coaching academy. They did a little incentive to get you to reach a certain goal, and then they were going to send you to Malibu. And I just kept visualizing myself in Malibu. And I would see sweatshirts with the name Malibu and all that. I was like, because I'm going to Malibu, like obviously. And I just got on the frequency of being in Malibu. And I'll never forget this because I didn't hit my goal. And there was one spot left. Other people had hit their goals. There was one spot left. And a friend of mine, Tanya, and I, we both said that we were going on the trip, but now there's only one spot left, and both of us hadn't hit the goal. So I remember messaging her in the morning, asking her how she was feeling. And she said, Oh, I'm feeling okay. And I said, Listen, there's still a chance. Like, you're going to go on that trip because there's one spot left and they have to give it to somebody. So I went out walking the dogs and I was just listening to our team call with my headphones. And I remember somebody messaging me saying, Turn your camera on. And I was like, okay, I'm walking the dogs. Like, I will in a minute. And it's like they wanted my camera to be on because they said, so there's only one spot left, but there were 2 people and we're giving it to Jess and Tanya. And I was like, did I just manifest an all expenses paid trip to Malibu? Yes, of course I did. Because I have adopted this belief that I can travel whenever I want, and there doesn't actually have to be an exchange of money.
Right.
And so, you know, I will meet a lot of people, or I'll have coaching clients myself, and they'll say, I want to manifest 10K months or 20K months or whatever it is. And I say, why? They're like, I want to travel more. I want to take my whole family on a trip. I'm like, okay, well, is money the only way that you can do that? And a lot of people think that's the only way.
Right.
But I'm like, you can win a trip on the McDonald's Monopoly game.
Yeah, it's true.
You can, with points, like on their credit card, people have points that they don't even know they have. You know, you could have like your grandfather say, you know, I want to send you guys on a trip. Or like me, one trip through my work, I've had multiple trips throrough Angela. You know what I mean? Like even when we went to Poland, Laura paid for everything. Because I'm so good at manifesting trips.
Oh, it's all so fun, right? And you know, that's the really cool thing about building beliefs is, you know, you got one free trip and then you got another free trip. And now you're like, I just don't have to pay for trip. And then it just kind of happens, right?
Yes, it's so true. It's like
Yeah.
one thing can happen and then you build a belief based on that memory.
Yeah.
And that's why I always encourage people to like tune in to the memories they're bringing back, because some people will bring back the memories that don't serve their
Right.
desires, right?
So it's about being intentional
Mhm.
with what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people tend to get stuck in a loop,
Mhm.
repeating thoughts and beliefs that don't serve them. And that's just, there's always something else that's better to think about, right? And it could be something as simple as, oh, I see the blue sky. The blue sky is so nice. Like if you don't have any other things to think about, then just look at nature, because there's so much beauty all around us, right?
Totally. Be open to it all. And so even though we didn't get too much into like the places we've traveled, we'll have to do that again
Yeah,
another
this is more
time.
about travel.
Yeah,
Physically.
but
Getting on a plane and flying.
but it's like, you know, there's just so much to see. And honestly, I've heard people say before, oh, I didn't really like this place, or I didn't really like this place. I'm like, every single place I've gone, there has been so much that I have enjoyed.
Right.
Because sometimes it's about having a completely different experience. Like I've had experiences at 5-star ritzy hotels, and then I've had experiences like Britt and I, we went to Cuba. I don't even remember when that was. It was quite a few years ago, and it was my second time in Cuba, and it was just like warm. We went to an all-inclusive, but our air conditioning was leaking in the room, and so like we had to move our luggage because it was like dripping on the floor or whatever. We had the best trip. Like, so it's so interesting how people will let one little thing,
One leaky
ruin,
AC.
right?
Yeah.
Ruin their whole entire trip. And so if you take anything from this podcast today, just know that what you're thinking about, what you're, you know, envisioning, or the memories that you're bringing up, that's what's creating your reality. And everything has two sides. Like Abraham Hicks always talks about, like there's two sides of the stick. So it's like Cuba could have been horrible because you got water all over your luggage,
Right.
or like the weather was so amazing, we met some amazing people. Britt and I got to connect together. We had these little photo shoots, and we got to dress up, we got to try new foods, you know. And I just think every experience has been so good, because does Cuba have the most flavorful food? No. But if you don't have that experience in Cuba, you don't recognize it when you go to Jamaica
Or
and
Mexico.
or Mexico,
Yeah.
and you have like all the flavor, right? So having that contrast, I think, is good.
Good. Yeah. Everything's always happening for you.
Yeah,
It really is. Well, this is great.
that's it. Okay, you're
Yes.
done your margarita.
And I have to pee as a result.
Cheers to another episode of
Margarita Mondays.